All right, guys, good morning. I wanted to get you a little code along to help you get started with the function exercises because I think it may be difficult to remember some stuff from the lesson and translate it into actually, coding. So I have this little replit here. I have imported the turtle as Tom. I've just created some things here, some initial things that I wanted to do. I set the pen size to 3 and the speed to 20 and the color I set. So there's 3 things I want to show you today. I want to show you how to make a function that defines an octagon. So when it runs, it gets an octagon. And then I'm going to show you ways of modifying it to make it more interactive. Okay. So if I want to make a function for an octagon, remember I start with the keyword def, and then I can go, let me just call it octagon because it's an easy, or I could call it draw octagon. Okay. Now I'm not going to have any parameters in this function. All right, so when I call it, I'm just going to tell it to run, and it's going to know to draw an octagon. So I'm going to tell Tom, so I want 8 actions to be repeated, okay? So I want, to put a for loop here. So for I in range 8, I want Tom to go forward, let's say it's 100 pixels, and then I want Tom to go right, and remember, for a polygon, for a closed polygon, it's just 360 divided by the number of sides. Okay, I could do this on my calculator, right? So I could do it on my Spotlight calculator if I wanted to get that. Now, if I hit run, nothing's going to happen, and that's because I haven't asked this function to run, right? So what I would need to do is add in a line below, I've defined the function. I say I want to draw octagon, and I want to use open and close parentheses. So even though it doesn't have any parameters, you must include the parentheses there because it's just part of the syntax of Python. So when it runs, it just draws an octagon. Now, if I wanted to fill it up, I could say tom.begin, underscore fill here, open and close parentheses, and then after the for loop, and I want to indent it to the level that's just the function level here, I want to say tom.end fill. Now, what you're going to find here is that you're going to want to use a for loop to draw your polygons, and so you want to make sure that there's 2 indentation levels here for lines 10 and 11 because they are part of the function. So they're indented one level automatically because they're part of the function, and they're indented a second level because they're part of the for loop. Your indentations are going to be really critical, right? So line 8, 9, and 12 are just part of the function but not part of the for loop. So they're indented one level. They're tabbed in one tab. Don't use spaces, always use tabs. Now, line 13 is not tabbed in at all. It's against the left margin because it's outside the function, right? You don't want a function call inside the function. You want it to run outside the function so that it can be seen by the program. If it's inside the function, it's not going to be able to be seen. So if I hit run, here it's going to fill it up. Okay. Now, let's say that this is kind of boring. It always draws the same thing. So I'm just going to comment this out for a second. Actually, you know what? Before I comment it out, let me copy it. Command C copies it, and let's go Command V paste it. And then I'm going to comment this out so it doesn't run here. Oh, by the way, actually, you know what I could do is I could just comment out this line right here, because then, it won't run at all. It will just, by default, these just sit in your program, the functions. So let's say I don't want to draw an octagon. I want to draw a polygon right here. So I want the polygon to be determined by, I want someone, every time I run it, I want it to make a different polygon. I want to have the option of making a different polygon. So I want to just define it as draw polygon. And what I can do here is I can make it a little bit more general by saying that when I call it, I'm going to give it the amount of sides I want, right? So the parameter here is sides. And every time I call it, I'm going to give it an argument. Could it be 4? Could it be 3? Could it be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. I'm just going to define it at the run time because otherwise it's a little bit more interactive in this regard. So I want to keep the begin fill because that just starts my fill. Now I want this to run for the amount of sides, right? Because I don't know what the sides amount is, but for however many sides, I want it to always go forward and turn right a certain amount. Now, the amount that I turn right is going to be 360 divided by the amount of sides. So notice sides is being used, this parameter is being used twice inside the function to determine how many times the loop runs and how it's a and the angle measurement is based on the calculation with the side. So that's important here. So instead of saying draw octagon, I want to say draw polygon. And here I want to give it like a side amount, right? So here gives me, if I say 4, I could say draw a polygon again and say, okay, now this time give me 10. It would draw 4, and then it would draw 10 around it. I could say this again, and I could say, oh, give me 20-sided. It's going to look like kind of a circle, though. There's 10, and there's the 20-sided, right? So this makes it a little bit more exciting because every time you run the function or call the function, it's going to make it a little bit different, okay? And finally, I want to show you what it looks like when you ask for the input inside of the function. So again, I'm going to grab this right here. Oh, let me just copy it. And then I'm going to comment these 3 lines out so it doesn't run. Now, let's say that I want the function to actually, when it runs, I want it to ask the user how many sides it wants. So here I'm going to take out the parameter here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create inside here, I'm going to create a variable called sides. And this is going to be equal to, well, first I want to do an int, right? Because I want to ask for an input, but I know that it's not going to be a number as it comes in. So it's critical for me to use the int function here. Now this is, so it has no parameters, but it creates a variable inside the function that's called sides. So everything else is okay here because for whatever somebody gives me, it's going to be stored as sides and then run the calculation that way. So here, if I just say draw a polygon, I would just say open and close parentheses here. And when I run it, I'm going to go to my console and say how many sides does it want? 3, and it creates that. If I run it again, how many sides? Here, I would say 20 again, and it will give me this. Okay, so there's 3 different ways of creating functions. Each level increases the amount of interactivity that you have with these functions.